There was a number of other issues that we had to jump over hurdle on. Mark Brewer wanted every judge in Michigan to be disqualified from hearing this because we were cutting. He was cutting everybody's pay by 25%. I said, no, you can't do that. I said, I know Bill Schuette's not running for re-election. His judicial pay won't be cut. Perhaps we should just let Bill Schuette hear this case. And I said, besides that, if everybody is disqualified, then no one is disqualified. And under a doctrine called the rule of necessity. And so, although they tried to make that motion before Judge Whitbeck, he denied the motion for recusal. And he and ironically enough, Bill Schuette and Peter Meter,
who are all Court of Appeals
judges unanimously ruled that this was, in fact, a general revision of the Michigan Constitution and eligible for placement on the ballot. Interestingly enough, I went to the state Supreme Court. I didn't think they'd accept jurisdiction, but they did, and they heard an appeal. 3 of the judges were prepared to accept the ruling of the Court of Appeals. 3 other judges, Kavanaugh, Markman, and Betty Weaver, didn't like all the references in the Court of Appeals ruling to kind of California case law. And they said that you can't explain this in 100 words, and said that that's why they keep it off the ballot. Only Marilyn Jean Kelly dissented, and so it was a 6-1 decision, but the reasoning of the court was kind of split. So it didn't qualify for the ballot. Now, Mark Brewer didn't go off into the sunset in disgrace like he deserved to at the time, but he came back and did the sleeping judge ad that fall against Cliff Taylor, and Diane Hathaway defeated Cliff Taylor that November, and so the court changed to a Democratic majority, with Betty Weaver voting with the Democrats to elect Marilyn Jean Kelly as the Chief Justice.
Right. Okay, we get to the year 2010, 2 years later, 33 years after you arrive from Wisconsin. What's significant about the year 2010?
In 2010, all of the races that were contested on the ballot that year pretty much went to Republicans. Rick Snyder won in a landslide over Virg Bonero. That had an impact on Democratic turnout farther down the ballot. All of the statewide constitutional officers were Republican. Bill Schuette and Ruth Johnson, Attorney General and Secretary of State. Bob Young was reelected, and joining him on the court was Mary Beth Kelly. So the Republicans now had a 4-3 majority come January 1 of 2011. Mary Beth Kelly and Bob Young edged out the Democratic nominees, one of which, Alton Davis, had succeeded Betty Weaver when she resigned in July of...
Alton Davis, a Democrat appointed by Jennifer Granholm, which had given the Democrats a temporary majority on the court for about 5 months.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the State House and Senate.
Yeah, and
congressional delegation.
The State House, I think, had 63 seats. That was kind of a high water mark for Republicans, and Democrats 2 years previously, in 2008, I think had in the high 60s, then
it was 67-43 going into the election. The Republicans picked up 20 seats, and they got a 63-47 majority.
And then the Republicans in the Senate actually had a supermajority. They picked up 26 seats, and had an automatic 2/3 majority there. So Supreme Court, statewide constitutional officers, and a House and the Senate. And that probably led the way to a number of legislative initiatives in the 2011-2012 legislative session. The MEA tried to do a recall and succeeded with a state representative. You recall his name? The chairman of the House Education.
Oh, you're talking
Committee.
about Paul Scott?
Yeah, Paul Scott.
State representative from Genesee
Right.
County.
And Republicans retaliated for that recall with the change in the Public Employment Relations Act, and prohibited public bodies from deducting union dues for school teachers. And then the 2012 election saw all sorts of labor union inspired initiatives put on the statewide ballot. They all failed. The constitutional amendments failed, and then the state legislature in the lame duck session did enact right to work, something that I think no one had ever foreseen going into.
Did the chamber and/or you personally have that much to do with enacting right to work in Michigan?
The chamber did. I was retired by that time, but the chamber was very active in the no campaign on not only Proposal 2,
which was collective bargaining.
That was collective bargaining. And then there was
that organized labor had put on the ballot.
And then I think there were two other kind of union-inspired ballot question proposals that they were opposed to. And I know they ran some very effective TV spots that, just vote no on all of these things.
Right.
And I didn't get involved in anything until in the lame duck session. I did get involved in making changes to the recall law. And in doing so, those changes, which I think were long overdue, were really inspired by the Wisconsin recall election law with some modifications to it. But nonetheless, no one was subject to recall due to their vote for or against right to work, in the 2012 election cycle.
Well, in essence, the changes that you had made to the recall law made it harder to recall public officials. Now, some people might criticize that new law, saying we shouldn't make it harder to recall them, but it was almost ridiculously easy to recall public officials, particularly for
I think with the model that Michigan had adopted for recall, first of all, if you were recalled, or subject to a recall, you were on the ballot all by yourself, and the question was yes or no. And so it was like a scarlet letter put around your chest, and it was more a public humiliation than it was a political contest. And then, if in fact you were successfully recalled, you were ineligible to run for re-election, to fill the vacancy in a special election. And the changes that were made basically allow the incumbent to appear on the ballot. There can be challengers, and whoever gets the most votes finishes out the term. But now it becomes more of a political contest than a political humiliation. And also we took a provision from the Wisconsin law that reduced the time period from 90 days to collect signatures to 60. Wisconsin had the 60-day requirement along with 6 other states that have recall. And, so that shortened that process as well.
We could go on, and there's so many other things I want to ask you, but, I think we've got to bring this interview to an end. There were 10 principal Bob LaBrant principles, pristine principles of political success that I wanted you to go through. but it would take too long to go through them, so I'm just going to urge everybody, read this book, Pac-Man, a Memoir, because you read this book and you're not only going to see and read and hear in Bob's voice now that you've seen it on this video, everything that he's been talking about today, but he's going to talk about his principles in there, and it's something you don't want to miss if you're the ultimate political junkie. So Bob LaBrant, thank you very much for a splendid interview. It's
Well,
been
Bill,
a great
thank you.
pleasure. Great pleasure.